Okay. So I would like to call this meeting to order. It's October 8th, 2020 at 1:01 p.m. I'm Councilmember Monica Montgomery Stepp, and I co-chair the City County Reinvestment Task Force with Supervisor Fletcher, who will be joining us shortly. Our meetings have gone virtual so that everyone can stay safe. You can watch the live stream if you are a member of the public on the Housing Commission's YouTube channel. We are joined at this task force by bank representatives and community partners. And together with the public's input, the Reinvestment Task Force is convened to monitor and report bank lending performance, provide financial education and public information, to serve in an advisory capacity to the city and county of San Diego. So with that, let's go ahead and move to public comment.
We have one public comment, council member. Got everything queued up, but 1,000 tabs, right? Our public comment is from David Otto of San Diego, and he writes, "Dear members of the San Diego City County Reinvestment Task Force, in light of the Reinvestment Task Force's recent statement on ending systemic racism, how do you explain Bank of America's recent closure of its branch office and subsequent replacement with an ATM machine in the racially diverse, low and moderate income community of Linda Vista? Such closure deprives a vibrant community of a full service bank and seems at odds with city and county of San Diego reinvestment policies. How many bank branches in San Diego County's low and moderate communities and communities of color have been closed in the last 5 years? Which communities have been affected? Has the Reinvestment Task Force assessed the impact of such closures as it has done in the past? I would appreciate a written response to my public comment. Thank you very much for your attention to this matter." That is the end of public comment.
Okay, thank you very much. And I know that we have an update, a COVID-19 update later on. And if our Bank of America representative is here, maybe they can address that. So we're going to move on to task force member comments. I would like to thank all of our task force members for being here with us this afternoon. And because we're online, I'm just going to go ahead and call out the names of the organizations that are with us. And if you have any comments, then let us know now. And then just in the interest of time, again, we're doing the COVID-19 updates and having a roundtable on that later. So if you have something short and sweet for us now, then please do so. We'll start with Axion San Diego.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Schott with Axion here in San Diego, and we focus on supporting small businesses with education and access to capital. And I'll save my updates for the roundtable discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. CPI. I don't see anyone from my vantage point, but want to make sure. Okay. IRC, International Rescue Committee. Okay, let's go to the MAC project.
All right, you can hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Adolfo, COO for MAC, and I will save the time for us because most of my comments will come to discussion items that we'll get to.
Okay, thank you. I won't skip over the San Diego Housing Federation, just in case you have any quick updates.
Unrelated to the agenda item, I just wanted to let you know that our affordable house. Can you hear?
All right, you can hear me?
I can't.
Our affordable
there
housing.
may be one person.
For MAC, and I will save the time for us because most of my comments will come to discussion items that we'll get to.
Stephen, just one moment. If everybody could make sure that your phone is muted. I mean, your Zoom is muted, it'd be great. All right.
Is that me? So I just wanted to let folks know that our Affordable Housing Conference is underway even as we speak. I want to thank you. We have many great sponsors and a speaker tomorrow. If you have the opportunity to see Armanda and Derry from Funders Together to End Homelessness National will be addressing us at our keynote address tomorrow at 12:15. So I hope you can be there, and thank you for those of you who have been participants and sponsors of the conference.
Thank you very much. Wakeland Housing and Development Corporation.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Peter Armstrong from Wakeland. I don't have any specific updates at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Bank of America?
Good afternoon. No comments at this time.
Okay, thank you, Pamela.
I can address am I supposed to address the comments here from the public comment or later?
Let's do it during the COVID-19 because I think it was specific to
Okay.
that.
Just making sure.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Citibank?
Hi, thank you for the opportunity. I just wanted to say during this portion that Citi recently launched Action for Racial Equity, which is a new company-wide commitment to deliver on 4 key business goals. One is to provide greater access to banking and credit in communities of color. 2, increase investment in Black-owned businesses. 3, expand homeownership among Black households. And 4, advance anti-racist practices in the financial services industry. We reached out to key stakeholders to get their feedback and thoughts on Citi's plan. And thank you for the comments that we received back. We really appreciate that. And we shared that with our senior leadership team. And I will share more as more information is developed.
Thank you so much, Chi. That's great news. JP Morgan Chase.
Hi, sorry, I was a couple minutes late. And so I didn't hear the first part of your question. If you don't mind repeating it.
Yeah, no, it's no problem. These are just any updates, quick updates that you may have for us. This is the item number 3, task force member comments. So it's just if you have anything that you want to share with us.
Perfect, thank you. Yeah, so actually the firm made an exciting announcement this morning. It's a $30 billion commitment specifically focused on advancing racial equity. This is really kind of in part a philanthropic initiative, but really more squarely focused on our business lines of business. And so the investments, similar to actually what Chi was sharing, are really focused around kind of 4 key areas. So promoting and expanding affordable housing and home ownership for underserved communities, growing Black and Latinx owned businesses, improving financial health and access to banking in Black and Latinx communities, and accelerating investment within our own employee base and building a more diverse and inclusive workforce. So there's several kind of press releases and announcements that went out, so I'm happy to circulate that information to this group after. But again, so this was announced this morning, so I would say certainly more to come as things actually get rolled out.
Okay, thank you. We will go now to Union Bank.
Good afternoon, everyone. Frank Robinson in Diverse Markets Executive for the bank. Exciting to announce last month that we launched our Community Recovery Program, which is a $10 million fund that we are putting together. And we're focused on 3 areas, really: small business recovery, rebuilding the workforce, and financial security. Nonprofits can apply, go online and apply for funding for your program. And you do not have to be a 501c3 to apply. You could be a 501c6. So we're looking at business associations, maybe it's the Black Chamber, Latinx Chamber that wishes to apply, which normally are 501c6s. You can apply for funding to support one of those 3 initiatives. And we are pushing money out the door as we speak. We just had our first meeting last week, and money went into the hands of those that actually need it on the ground in grassroots areas. So we're really excited about this program.
Awesome. Thank you, Frank. We have US Bank next.
Thank you. I think I will reserve my comments for when we're in the roundtable, but great to be here and good to see you. Congratulations.
Thank you. Good to see you, Raquel. And our last, well, third to last person is Wells Fargo.
Hey everyone, Antonio Barbosa with Wells Fargo Bank. I can't wait for the roundtable. Just really quick, as you know, we decided to donate all the processing fees from the PPP. That's close to $400 million. We are right now working on the first phase, which is 250 million to support CDFIs. And we just announced the second phase that is gonna be supporting organizations that provide technical assistance. I already met with some of the organizations here to work on and coach them to try to bring the money here to San Diego. And so I can go through the details later in the roundtable.
Okay, great. Thank you, Antonio. I see my co-chair has arrived, so just want to say hello, Supervisor. Do you have anything that you would like to say right now? Any announcements?
No, just good to be here. Thank you, Council Member, and I look forward to the meeting.
Okay, awesome. Just real quick, want to let everyone know that the city approved the Office of Race and Equity as a department, as its own standing department last week. And so we are continually working on that foundation and really building it so that it can create that systemic change that we're looking for from the inside out. And also, I think we can credit the last roundtable that the RTF had to the beginning of the Strategic Alliance of Ethnic Chambers, where the ethnic chambers really came together, formed an alliance, and are now receiving money and doing that outreach on the ground that Frank talked about for folks that really need assistance right now. So that's some good news. And with that, we'll move on to item 4, which is approval of the minutes. So I would entertain a motion at this time. If we can remember that far back, April 16th.
I move approval of the minutes.
Second,
Okay.
This is Frank Robinson.
Okay, great. We have a motion by Peter and a second by Frank. And all in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Aye. Okay, and none opposed, so that passes unanimously. So let's move on to the staff report. Daisy?
Thank you, Council Member. Got a couple of items. So first up, we are back with Community Reinvestment Act reform on the table. In late May, the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, which is the regulator for the largest banks, which are at this table, approved a final rule that we had sent a letter in opposition to in April. The rule is highly detrimental to investment in low and moderate income communities, so detrimental that the other two federal bank regulators, the Federal Reserve and the FDIC, declined to sign on to the rule, which is unprecedented to have just one regulator going on its own. We haven't heard much since then. I think the banks have a lot of data requirements that they're working to put into place, new reporting things. But in the meantime, a couple of weeks ago, the Federal Reserve has now come out with its own alternative proposal. And we have higher hopes for this one. It is much more responsive to community needs while addressing some of the modernization aspects that have been talked about for CRA for years in terms of online banking and things like that. The Federal Reserve did something interesting. The proposed rule that they published has a 120-day comment period, unlike the usual 90 or maybe 60. And my read on this is that they're allowing for the possibility of a change of administration. The way they have also written the rule is to bring in the OCC as an agency that could sign on, so we could once again have a unified regulatory standard. But this is all new. I've already been attending a couple of webinars. I'm learning all about it. We will again create a comment letter that will go in before the end of January when when comments are due on this item. My second item relates to the free tax preparation work that the RTF has been doing in support of the EITC Coalition and Dreams for Change, our primary provider, the largest provider of free tax preparation in the county. All of this with support from a grant to the RTF from Citi. It's a multi-year project. It's been incredibly successful in expanding access to free tax preparation and helping people to get those earned income tax credits that can be thousands of dollars for families. We're really proud of our association, the outreach that we've done to get more people and the way we've helped build capacity. The state has also helped to build capacity in recent years by sending a lot of money down to the local providers. And this year they've announced that they're going to be repurposing that money for needs related to COVID. As we know, there's so many, and we'll be hearing more about it probably, but so many really, really urgent basic needs like hunger. I can't entirely quibble with what they're doing, but it's going to have a devastating impact on our local providers. Teresa Smith at Dreams for Change tells me that it's about $150,000 that they're looking for. I was going to say cut, but she had earlier told me that it was a much bigger cut than that. So maybe she's adjusted her budget. And so we do have money left. Like I said, this is a multi-year project, but we don't have anything close to that. If anyone knows of a partner who would be interested in getting more information about this, please let me know. I have more information from Teresa or can connect you directly to her. She estimates that the cuts will mean they can only open 2 of their innovative shopping mall-based sites instead of 4, and that they'll serve almost half as many people, about 4,500 fewer people, just for Dreams for Change, and maybe 6,000 across the whole coalition. So this is a dramatic change. I did ask her, in case you're wondering, well, you went virtual during COVID. Can that help? Can that help make you more efficient? And she said that there are a lot of clients in this population, especially older people who are not comfortable. They want to go in person, even with social distancing and masking. And then she said, actually, because of all of the extra protocols they put in place, it is faster to have somebody coming in for an appointment than it is. So it's not actually more efficient to do it in virtual, but they will, of course, continue that for anybody who asks. Happy to answer, offline or here if anyone has any other questions. The third item I have, we have talked here about the co-chairs working on a project that we will bring to you later to expand first-time homebuyer assistance. We're still working on that. We had a great work group meeting with the banks who may be able to fund or participate or align their efforts with it. We continue to work on that. The co-chairs' offices, their staff are working really closely with me, and they are producing probably a follow-up letter that'll go out to the banks in a couple of weeks, and we'll figure out what the next steps are. I'll probably reach out to all of you, the bank reps, and just talk one-on-one about how can we innovate around this. If the first ask is audacious, maybe it's a 5-year thing that we reach for. How do we go towards that? And in the meantime, what can we do instead to, again, help more people build, join home ownership? That actually feeds into my fourth item is this week. Twice a year I used to go up to San Francisco for the San Francisco Federal Reserve's Community Advisory Committee. We had that meeting with the President, Mary Daly, online on Monday. 2 points that stood out from me from the updates from around the 12-state region. One is that LMI people are being affected by rising home prices because people who can afford to, who are in small apartments, are moving into homes. So this is an unanticipated effect. In the meantime, we're also seeing, say down in the Achievement Academy, that LMI people whose jobs were unaffected are still looking at home ownership because the interest rates are low. So we'll continue to work with them on financial counseling and preparing them for home ownership. It's an interesting, unfortunate effect. The other one we can talk about possibly during the update item, but they are seeing that you know, on the one hand, there's a talk to get more liquidity out to CDFIs to give loans to small businesses. But on the other hand, a lot of folks who work directly with those small businesses are saying that they don't want loans. They'll take grants. They certainly need the cash liquidity, but they are too uncertain about their future to take on a loan. So maybe we'll talk about that more later. And then my last item, speaking of the Federal Reserve, I don't know if anyone else caught it, but yesterday there was a fairly extraordinary event. It was put on by 3 of the regional feds, and it was called Racism and the Economy. I encourage anybody to go to YouTube and Google that. The entire event is online. It was 2.5 hours. I had other things lined up that I was going to multitask on, and I didn't get to any of them because it was incredible. They had some of the most magnificent speakers. They had the first Black Federal Reserve Regional President, Raphael Bostic. They had Angela Glover Blackwell of PolicyLink. They had Ursula Burns, who was the CEO of Xerox, and they were all incredible, inspiring, brilliant. Oh, Jeffrey Canada of Harlem Children's Zone. There were just a lot of good ideas and comments in there. So that was exciting and motivated me, and we all probably need that at this point, each of us, something to help us connect with other people and the work that we do. That is my staff report. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Daisy. Before I go to questions, I'll just, can you send the link to the presentation, the 2.5-hour presentation on race and the economy to us, either in the chat or just a email blast? I would love to watch that.
I will email it and I'll post it to the RTF website, sandiegortf.org, under today's meeting.
Awesome, thank you. Any other questions for Daisy? All right, awesome. Thank you so much, Daisy. We're going to now move on to our informational items. We'll start with item number 6, which is Measure A, City of San Diego Affordable Housing Bond. So Stephen Russell, take it away. You're muted on my end, and then
there we go.
There we go. And we're gonna
there we go.
We'll see where you are at 15 minutes, okay?
I will make sure we keep that tight. So thank you, Councilmember Montgomery Stepp, and thank you everyone for the opportunity to share with you Measure A here in San Diego, Homes for San Diegans. As many of you may know, with the City of San Diego the City Council unanimously accepted a report a year ago that gave scale to the problem of homelessness in the City of San Diego. It's the Community Action Plan on Homelessness, and it identified the scale of the problems, the scale of the resources needed to effectively address homelessness here, both in terms of capital and in terms of services. One of the things that it pointed out for the capital side is that we need a bond measure, a local bond measure, if we are going to have the capital to build the number of homes we need. So Measure A was intended to fulfill the capital side of this plan. Why is it that we need it? These should not be unfamiliar figures to many of you, but this is from the city's preservation study that was just recently adopted, I think in July of this year. Look at housing that is available to folks at 50% of AMI and below, and that's what the blue blocks represent. If you look at the year 2000, in that year, there were 92 that were naturally affordable to families and households at 50% AMI and below. That number had dropped to 58,000 by 2010, is down to 26 in present day, and is expected to continue to decline with current trend, to where we may have in 20 years from now only 10% of that affordable housing left. This mostly represents not, of course, the literal destruction of affordable housing, but it is the bidding up of housing that was formerly affordable. Folks who are middle income don't do without housing. What they do is they buy or rent the housing that was previously occupied by folks of lower income. So this is an alarming trend, and it's easy to explain from an experiential standpoint. If you know neighborhoods like North Park that used to be purely CDBG eligible 20 years ago, there's maybe one CDBG eligible census tract in North Park at this point in time. The existing housing stock has been bid up, and the housing that has been produced has been in the upper end of the income spectrum. At the same time, wages have not kept up by any means, and these are the 10. Well, this is, I should date this a little bit. This was as of January, the 10 fastest growing occupations in the city of San Diego, according to the San Diego Regional EDC. And what that shows is of those 10 fastest growing occupations. So these are people who are actively getting engaged in the economy right now. Only 3 of them actually could afford a median priced apartment in this region. So we are not only in a housing affordability crisis, we're growing into a deeper crisis simply through the wage to rent gap that exists in this region. The reason I date that is because a lot of these jobs, there's a number of them that are in the hospitality industry. Of course, that's where some of the deepest losses have been. So that does date this, but as the jobs return, we don't expect at this point that wages will be significantly different. I also want to point out the blue map is a rental at-risk map. So of households at risk of losing their housing in the next 6 months due to COVID and loss of income. And I want to compare it to the redlining maps from like 80 years ago. And when you look at where neighborhoods are, where folks are deeply at risk of actually being unhoused, they correspond fairly well with the maps of where we have redlined neighborhoods historically. What we're proposing as in terms of capital to address this, because we need housing, we need housing that folks can afford. The market is not producing that. As we see, it's going in the opposite direction. Bond is proposed as a $900 million general obligation bond for affordable and permanent supportive housing. 28 permanent supportive housing units are what are specified in the action plan on homelessness as needed in order to address the population that is currently chronically homeless. And we believe we can produce another 4,700 affordable housing units that would serve other populations who are not in need of the special services that permanent supportive housing provides. Those populations include low-wage working families, seniors on fixed incomes, veterans on fixed incomes, people living with disabilities, and transition-aged youth. So kids coming out of foster care who have need of a support network. Again, the differentiation here, the PSH has services. The affordable housing units are intended for folks who are housing unstable, but are not necessarily in need of the services that permanent supportive housing provides. It was proposed to be paid for with an Lorum property tax, estimated to range over the years, because looking at issuing these bonds over an approximate 7-year period. This particular graph was prepared by city's debt management. And it proposes $150 million issuance in year 1, with subsequent $125 million issuances in the 6 years that follow. And what that leads to is a tax rate that is estimated at $3.14 per 100,000 of assessed value in year 1, going up to $20.85 by the final year. I will point out that when we're talking about capital, some of the cheapest capital you can get is cash. You don't pay anything on cash. In terms of borrowing money, tax-exempt municipal bonds stopped by property tax are considered some of the least expensive capital that you can obtain in the marketplace. And so we're trying to propose a way of spreading the cost broadly and getting it as inexpensively as possible. The net impact on households, homeowner, valued home right now is approximately $600,000. So with the lowest tax rate at the beginning, year 1, we'd be talking about $1.57 per month additional property tax for a homeowner, going up to $10.40 by year 7, when all $900 million in bonds are actually issued. For an apartment, and I don't say for an apartment tenant or for apartment owner, because we don't know how, of course, the market reacts to that, whether it's passed on or not. With the first tranche of $150 million, it would be an additional cost of approximately 98 cents per month. And that's on a $175,000 valued apartment, which represents something built a few years ago, not today. Today would be about 400,000, but the big boom of apartments we had 3 years ago mostly are valued in that $307,000 range. So again, the cost in terms of additional tax would be 98 cents in the first month, up to $6.51 by year 7. The bond measure specifies in the language on the ballot that it would be administered by the San Diego Housing Commission, according to the Housing Authority, which is the City Council. It includes a Citizens Oversight Committee, some defined roles. It requires external independent audits, an annual plan, and annual reports to the Housing Commission, the Oversight Committee, and the City Council. I want to underscore, and I guess for this audience, maybe it may not be as necessary, but the role that this money plays. You talk about $900 million, it gets leveraged. It gets leveraged 3 or 4 times over. And I want to point out an example of how this money might have been used in, for instance, Stella, which is a permanent supportive housing project that just got built in the Grantville portion of the city. The total cost was $28 million at a per unit cost of $359,000. I should point out that the average over the past 5 years from the housing has been approximately $325,000 per unit. And I think that's important to point because we get outlier numbers, especially pulled down from LA or San Francisco, people talk about. In the city of San Diego, our historic average has been approximately $325,000. In here, what is the role of the bond money in projects such as this? Say, look at the San Diego Housing Commission loan. That is where the public money comes in. At $7.5 million, you are able to leverage tax credits and other sources to get up to the $28 million total development cost. This one's been leveraged at a rate, the green money, the San Diego Housing Commission loan has been leveraged at a rate of 3.83 times over. So that's how we take a $900 million housing bond with kind of leverage, and it becomes a $3 to $4 billion building program in the San Diego region. The economic impact of such a bond, we know what per 1,000 units, it translates into jobs. And so with May, that represents approximately 8,700 jobs and $413 million in wages. We've garnered support from the San Diego County Taxpayers Association, the AGC, the BIA. I would add not just the AG, but also the Labor Council. So to have a broad spectrum, I think, is important. The BIA, the San Diego Downtown Partnership, LISC San Diego, and many, many others. In summary, what we're believing was the premise of Measure A is that the solution to homelessness is home, that the Community Action Plan on Homelessness makes clear that we need locally generated capital to get our fair share of state and federal dollars, because we are, especially with Props 1 and 2, the $6 billion we passed a couple of years ago, we are at a disadvantage and we have not gotten our fair share. We're paying for those bonds. We're not getting our fair share of them because we don't have a latch to hook that money onto. Most importantly, and I stress this time, we need to come up with a solution that is commensurate to the scale of the problem. And this measure with $900 million leveraged to $4 billion, building those 2,800 units that the action plan says we need, we believe that this is the scale of response that is appropriate to the scale of the problem. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions that folks may have.
Okay, thank you so much, Stephen. I don't know if we have any, do we have any public comment on this item, Daisy?
You do, council member. Let me flip to that screen.
Okay.
We have one public comment from Simone Ruff of the Corporation for Supportive Housing. She writes, the Corporation for Supportive Housing applauds today's discussion of Measure A. As CSH authored the city's Community Action Plan on Homelessness, and we are painfully familiar with the critical housing need for our most vulnerable populations. CSH follows an evidence-based approach, and the data for San Diego are stark. There are significant race equity disparities, in particular for Black people experiencing homelessness, who make up 4.7% of the population, but 21% of the unsheltered homeless population. We have the lowest amount of supportive housing per capita of any major city. We have a shortfall of 142,590 very low, extremely low, low-income units. We have 19 affordable homes for every 100 families who need them, lower than the state average. We must invest in housing at a significantly larger scale, and an ongoing competitive disadvantage for state funding would be tragic lost opportunity with implications for decades to come. CSH is also a CDFI, and we clearly see how this bond measure can help the region advance CRA goals while focusing on equitable investment, community development, and racial equity. We need to be bold and continue to recognize the scale of the current housing need. That's the end of public comment.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I want to just give Supervisor Fletcher time if you want to say anything at all about this as we go into questions from our task force members.
No, thank you, Councilmember, and Stephen. I appreciate all the work you all have done bringing this forward. Look, this is an investment that we have to have in our region, and I think this measure is so vitally important to everything that we're trying to do. You know, we've taken a lot of vacant or surplus county land that might be in the city of San Diego. I have a number of projects that are going in my district. Just this morning, I was down at another one that's going. and it's simply not enough. And it's not an insurmountable task. There's certainly barriers to building affordable housing, but it's not an insurmountable task. We need more resources. And so I just think, I fully support this. I think it is much needed and very important. Obviously, these are challenging times and difficult times, and it's never easy to go out and build the support behind this. But I think we all have to do everything we can to try and help ensure this passes, and then work with you to make sure we can cite it, we can draw down other resources, we can match the funds, and we can stretch every one of these dollars as far as possible.
Okay, agreed. Questions from task force members for Stephen? No? Okay. It's
A lot of them have been
crowd.
brief, I think.
Folks are supporting you. All right. Well, I want to take the time to publicly say thank you to you, Stephen, for being an active voice in the city of San Diego, and particularly in District 4 around this issue. There are a lot of different opinions about what Measure A could actually do. And you've been there and been very factual about sharing that information with community members. District 4 is very unique in that we have had quite a bit of affordable housing development, which is needed across the city of San Diego, but not as much development in some other community amenities. So it leaves folks with a sort of a bad taste in their mouth around affordable housing. And so we have to acknowledge that that has happened, that we do have a lack of resources in District 4, but also that, we need affordable housing across the city of San Diego. And, we got to get rid of the misperceptions about folks who live in affordable housing as well. I would say, I continue to say this, my grandmother raised 4 children in what is now Seabreeze Apartments, was Bay Vista Apartments, right in the heart of District 4. So, we have to get rid of that stigma, at the same time, provide our communities, make them whole and balanced. So thank you for all of your work. And if there are no further questions, Peter, I see you're unmuted, but do you have a question or comment?
I'd just like to say, I appreciate everybody's support on this measure. This COVID crisis has really made evident the need for affordable housing. We have very vulnerable populations that simply are not getting the services or the housing that they need. So I would stress that. And second, as an affordable housing developer, I have the really good fortune to see the impact on people's lives of this housing and these supportive services. So, chokes me up a little bit, but I get cards and letters, and we've had videos of our residents just describing the impact of this housing and these services on their lives, and it is really transformative. And everybody deserves that as a minimum. And so I would thank Steve and everybody who supported this measure. Councilmember Montgomery voted yes to get it on the ballot, so thank you. But I appreciate everybody's efforts to get this passed because it is very needed.
Thanks so much, Peter. Adolfo, you're unmuted. Did you want to say anything?
Yeah, very briefly, I just want to thank Steve personally. I've had the pleasure of taking a few meetings with him, but I know that since day one, our CEO, Adolfo, has been a partner in this, and Mac is very involved for the same reasons that Peter just described. Advocacy is something that it's greatly needed. So I do want to thank everybody on this call who has supported this measure, and Steve knows that Mac, alongside with them and all the others, are there and will continue to be there to ensure that we bring this to our community. It's greatly needed.
Thank you so much for that. Okay, if there are no other questions or comments, we are going to go ahead and move on to our next item, item number 7, Mapping Inequality Project, redlining in San Diego. And so this is Mapping Inequality is the product of a multi-university collaborative that recently digitized and geo-referenced the original Federal Homeowners Loan Corporation maps and in categories that provided the origin of the term redlining. And so Ricardo Flores from LISC is going to go into more of that for us. Ricardo, you have 15 minutes. Thank you.
So thank you everybody for your interest. I really appreciate it. So, you know, the one thing I want to start off by saying is the redlining maps and the descriptions of what was created is almost like exhibit number A of a long trial of what we've been doing in this country, which is really keeping Black and brown or Black and white families away from each other on purpose. And so I like to start off with folks and just say, you know, in your mind, you don't have to close your eyes, but in your mind, think about where you're from. Think about the neighborhood that you were, the community, the city that you grew up in, and what do the nice places look like? Who lives in those nice places? What do the schools look like? What kind of students or kids are in those schools? What kind of the parks look like? And this image that's in your head is in every human being sitting in the United States of America. It looks the same. And there's a reason for that. And so I want to get into the history just quickly on it as well, because that also helps share and talk a little bit more about why we have the situation we do and what the red line, and it gives context to the redlining map. So I'll quickly start off here. And so we all have seen this article, I think, in the 1619 Project in the New York Times, and this is the author, and this is her comment here. There's nothing natural about segregation. It was created through government policy, and it must be undone through government policy. And that's very true. Very, very true. It must be undone through government policy because it is a government policy. And so the story really starts off, I think, and it's not a hidden history, but it's a forgotten history. And it starts off with this gentleman, Ta-Nehisi Coates. And he wrote this article in the Atlantic about reparations. Well, a lot of the information that he talked about there was housing information. And that information came from a colleague of his named Richard Rothstein. And so Richard Rothstein, with Tallahassee's encouragement and Tallahassee's publisher, published this book. And Richard Rothstein's an education professor. And his goal was to find out why there was so much segregation in our schools. And what he came up with was land use laws. And so Richard put this book in together. And let me just tell you quickly what the story says. And so it's no surprise that in this country, we at some point had laws on the book. So we started to zone communities, right? When the Industrial Revolution was really picking up, we started to say, well, we can't have factories next to homes, et cetera, et cetera. But we also started to think the same way about people of color. Well, if you're going to come and live in my community, you have to live over there, or you have to live over there. And so we had specific laws in this country that said if you were Black or brown, you could not live in this area. Well, at some point, the Supreme Court came back and said, you know, that's just not right. That's plainly illegal. And so in 1917, they actually said that. They actually said you cannot not sell to somebody just because of their color of their skin. But 10 years later, they did come back and they said something else. They said, but you can limit apartments from what we call single family homes. And that's really the interesting part of our story. And this is the Chief Justice here. The Chief Justice at the time said apartments are a parasite. If you bring one, others will follow. The kids will be denied their open, privileged space to play. So really not very legal based, but very much socially based and socially racist based. And why is this so important? Well, it's important because the federal government at some point, when the Great Depression happened, made a concerted effort to get money back into the economy, and specifically money to homeowners, but only white homeowners. Then they would double down again on that same thing. After World War II, people came back from the war and the GI Bill was handed out like candy. People were getting GI Bill money to go buy a home. And so they were able to realize that opportunity, which they would later pass on to wealth. But it went even further than that. The government said, not only are we going to provide these mortgages to folks, we're going to underwrite the developers that build these projects. So this is where Donald Trump's dad gets his money from. This is Levittown, New York, and Levittown, Pennsylvania, 1947, the year my dad was born. These communities were built with federal assurances. The mortgages were federally backed as well. And this created what we all now consider the suburbs, and we all consider that single family era that many of us would like to preserve or continue to preserve. But there's a cost to that preservation. If you look here, Levittown to this day in New York is only 1% Black, or Levittown, Pennsylvania, again, no better. So these barriers supposedly are gone, but these barriers actually still very much exist. So what's going on here? Obama at the end of his term even called it out and said, look, we need to do something about this stuff called exclusionary zoning, single family zoning. This is really the heart of where a lot of our challenges come from. Steve and others will talk about, the answer to homelessness is a home. Well, the answer to segregation, the answer to inequality, all of this is actually a home. Social determinants of health, all of this is actually a home. And that's what's so fascinating. So here is where the redlining maps come in. And essentially what the federal government did, again, the economy crashed, the Great Depression happened. The federal government said, we need to know where to put money. And so they sent out a whole group of people to go out and map the United States. And they came back and they created these maps with the write-ups to basically tell the federal government where money should go, and also to tell the private sector where they should invest their money. And these became known as the redlining maps. So the other thing I'd like to share too is that people talk about character, community character. Well, this is fascinating. March 4th, 1924. This is the Union Tribune at the time, an editorial written in from somebody that lives in La Jolla, who is arguing against the city council at that time creating single family lots. He is saying, or she is saying, you're taking away from me, you're taking away from my property. So again, when we talk about culture, which culture are we talking about? Because in 1924, there was one culture. In 2020, there's another culture. And then probably in 2040, 2050, there'll be another culture. The good thing is the question then becomes, what do we do about this? And so we really have to look at home ownership differently. And so a coalition of us, that's what we're doing. It's very similar to what Tony Atkins is saying. Here's a parcel of land at the bottom here. This is a single family parcel, allow 4 units here. Unlike Tony Atkins, who wants to split the lot in half, and so 2 and 2 on 1, we're saying split them all, each one of them. Not only are you putting a hole in that single family zone concept, but you're also providing wealth building opportunities. Because if this parcel of land is in Kensington and it's worth $1 million, as you all know, 1/4 of a piece of land is not worth $1 million. There's your middle class housing. We will not be able to subsidize our way out of this middle class housing. You all know as bankers, because you're getting requests to help fund middle class housing. But the reality is, it's the value of the land is way too high. That's the problem. So now going back to what we were talking about before, and this is where the redlining information comes in. And let me just grab this quickly. Oh, sorry, trying to. Why can't I get this up? Sorry, everybody. I'm trying to. How come I can't unshare my thing? I don't know what's going on. Oh, stop sharing. Okay, sorry. Okay, so now I'd like to share with you guys all the redlining information that we found, because again, the redlining information is fascinating, but again, it's a time capsule into what was going on and what's happened. So here, these redlining maps actually came out in 2016, about the same year that Richard Rothstein's book came out. And so if you haven't seen them, or many people haven't seen them, it's because they were all digitized. Before that, you had to go do a FOIA request and all that to try to get this information. And so we put together just for San Diego, because again, it's not really the maps. The maps are interesting, but the maps reveal to us what we already know. People of color live here, certain people live up here, et cetera, et cetera. What we want to know is why? Why did this happen? How did this happen? And that's where the redlining maps actually start to tell us even more. The fascinating thing is this is all over the country. This isn't just San Diego. Look at this map. This is all over the United States of America. We have communities that, again, have been purposely been denied opportunity by law, and actually currently still are, because we have these laws on the books. And so this again is San Diego. So we put together this map, and one of the things, and this is the best grade was green. You wanted to be in green, right? And so I wanted to show you one thing here. So this is Mission Hills. And if I can try to zoom in, I don't know if I can, but if you were able to see this and zoom in, you would actually see that so not only do they talk about what the topography looks like, who lives there. And again, their goal is they want to tell the federal government and the private sector where to put money, but they want to put that money only in white neighborhoods. And so they're trying to find those white neighborhoods and to invest in. And so you can read about these communities and it gives you a bunch of information. But one of the things it says in these things is right here, if you read it closely, it says, deed restricted zone R1. They're telling us that these neighborhoods were segregated intentionally to keep people away from each other. And one of the ways they were doing it, and probably the predominant way they were doing it, was through zoning. And it's fascinating because, again, we look at these particular issues and what we're dealing with now. And I'll go back again, and this is all on our website, so you can kind of all just look at your leisure and look at your community. Look how your community, what it looked like. But again, we look at these maps that Steve was talking about in comparison to some of the challenges that he and they are trying to do with the housing, with the housing bond. And we see that, again, these are the same neighborhoods that groups like LISC, many of you, MAC and others, Wakeland and others, and all these other groups of nonprofits that have been out there trying to pump money into these communities, the banks, you guys have been fighting the CRA to do that. These communities are still so incredibly fragile. And that's what COVID has shown us, right? That the idea that, oh, look, we've got 50 million from here, 10 million from here, we're doing this. They're still very, very fragile. And what we also have to realize is that the green areas, the areas that were already prime areas for people back in 1930, are still prime areas for people in 2020. And I live in Kensington, and I have been through all of Kensington. And I can tell you there are very, very, very few people of color that live in Kensington. And that's the challenge we face. So the issue that we have going forward is that, yes, we no longer can say, I'm not going to sell to you because of your color, or I'm not going to do something, or because of your color, you have to go in this direction. But what we've done, though, is we replaced that with economic segregation. And we've said the price of admission into the best communities is the price to buy 5,000 or 7,000 square feet of land. That's the price of admission, right? And that value of that land is incredibly high. And not only is the value to buy the land, if you buy the land, you can't even put anything in your front yard. You can't even utilize your front yard. That's how exclusive this zoning was. And it's done a really good job because, again, we're still facing the same issues. And so the question now is, not only can we continue to put money into these communities, because that's what LISC and many of us on the affordable housing side and you all CRA folks are all committed to. We're committed to improving the communities there. But the other question is, why can't people go to other communities and live? Why can't they realize that? And so again, if you start to really relook at that land and single family zoning, and you start to say, does it have to be 5,000 or 7,000 square feet of land? No, it really doesn't. And if it doesn't, what does that do with the value of the land? Well, it lowers it. And on top of that, what does that do for the opportunity for folks to buy it? It creates it. Again, $1 million land in Kensington, cut it up, $250 a piece per land, let's say, add some construction on top of that, 500,000, a little under maybe, I don't know. That's your middle class housing. That's the opportunity that people have that they are denied right now. And on top of this, it just coincidentally that California is facing a housing crisis like never before seen. That's creating a spillover effect, like Steve Russell's saying, in terms of homelessness and the challenges of poverty like we've never seen before. In some cases, I would love to put a virtual wall around the city of San Diego, and every person that leaves, we mark down and say, okay, you're leaving because you can't afford it. We would probably be stunned to find out how many people have to leave our communities and who those people are. And why ultimately is this the most important thing for us and many others? Because again, it leads to all roads lead to housing. But most importantly, I have colleagues around the United States, like you all have colleagues, and places like Detroit. Banks can't even underwrite the properties in Detroit that were so little. People keep fleeing Detroit. You got blocks that are empty in Detroit. I went to Milwaukee for work years ago, and downtown Milwaukee is gorgeous, but no one's there. People keep leaving these communities. We don't have that problem, so our tax base will stay strong, but we have to accommodate for that growth. And the last little piece I'll say is, if we were to do this, the other interesting thing about when we think about land is that we increase the tax base. So it becomes a cyclical effect, right? If I now buy a piece of property, I have to pay taxes. Those taxes go right back into local government. And again, not only is the housing and the location of your home and the value of your home predicated upon the zoning, but so is the condition of your schools. So is the public safety of that same neighborhood. So it's fascinating that all this leads together. And that's why we wanted to put this pamphlet out for folks to look at and really make a decision for yourselves. Look at what it says, read about what they're saying, and realize that the laws that were created in 1920 are still with us today. And we need to do something about that, especially if we want to realize a true integrated society, not just integrated where we play, pray, or recreate, but who we live next to, who we grow up with. And it's not just racial, it's economic as well. So this is really the challenge that I think we face as a country. And interestingly enough, it's an issue with what's called zoning, and zoning is just a figment of the imagination. It could be switched. And if you're a homeowner in these neighborhoods, and this happens, the first thing you're going to do when you go sell your home is you're going to say, my value is worth more. Why? Because the value of my land is worth more because I can do more with it. I can actually, I will price that into the price point of my land to say, you can do X, Y, and Z with my land now. So anyway, I'll take questions and I'll also provide a link for all of you to look at this. And again, I encourage you to read it. It's very easy to read, but fascinating nonetheless.
Thank you very much, Ricardo. I'm going to go to Daisy and see if there are any public comments on this item first.
Wait, stop.
No, there are no more public comments for any of the remaining items.
Okay, awesome. Thank you very much. And Antonio, I'll start. Yes, I'll start with you.
Yeah, just a really quick comment, and thank you, Ricardo. So I just recently was putting together the community needs assessment for the CRA exam for San Diego, and it was very interesting for me to. It was finding the information. I think in San Diego County, we want to show the great place we are, the opportunities we have. So finding also the information about the issues, it was so difficult. Like I was going to SANDAC, I was looking everywhere to find issues about housing affordability, housing around small business. And I have to reach out to all the partners here to give me some data, some information that I can use for the document, because I understand that I think it's kind of difficult to invite people to invest in San Diego by telling them that we have many problems too. But I think there is an opportunity there to also share that information, because if we don't share it, I think it's difficult to address the issue. So I just went through this exercise a couple of weeks ago, and it was very, very interesting to try to find that information. And I'm guessing my other partners from other banks are having the same situation.
Thank you, Antonio. I'm going to go to Co-Chair Fletcher and then move on over to Raquel.
Thank you, Monica. Ricardo, that is probably the best presentation I've seen in a very concise and very passionate way around the issues of redlining. And I think what is so powerful about it is your opening quote talks about government policies created this. And so now government policies have to rectify and address it. And I think that most folks out there would be wholly unaware of the intentionality that went into creating the segregation that we face today and the ongoing continued efforts to perpetuate it. And I've seen the tool, I've had a chance to look at it, and I think what it brings to light, Ricardo, which you do in such an incredible way walking through the history of it, is this is still here. It's very much still here, and you can look at the maps and see it. And a part of everything that we're trying to do is address these issues, but there's an education component, where people need to understand what created it and why we have to take action to undo it. And so I want to really commend Lisk for creating the tool and you for putting it together and walking through it. And I just hope more folks can hear and see the story behind it, the history behind it, and then they'll be more inclined to be more supportive of actions we'll take to change it. And that's true in a lot of issues. So I commend you for that work and that presentation.
And if there are groups out there that you guys would like me to share this with, I would love to share it with them. Because again, it is, like you said, Supervisor, it's very impactful. And it was such a subtle thing that people shake their heads. I mean, as many of you know, I work for the local government as well. And so I also had a belief that, oh yeah, there's culture of your community. And then you start reading about this stuff and you're going, wait a minute. And so you're absolutely right. Richard Rothstein says it best. It's not a hidden history, but it's a forgotten history.
That's right. Yeah, thank you.
Raquel, and then we'll go to Steve.
So my question is around what action steps we can potentially take, Ricardo, that you think would be meaningful in moving us forward to kind of a different place. And I guess I'd be interested to hear if there are things that you believe we as financial institutions could be helpful in some way in terms of supporting?
Yeah, so we have a coalition of folks that are working on this, and really what we're asking is we want to take single family zoning and to expand it and say that if you own a single family zone parcel of land, that you're allowed to subdivide it. You're allowed to subdivide it into 4 different parcels and sell each parcel if you like individually, build them up or rent them all out. Like I showed you before, there was and interesting enough, the city of San Diego actually passed a law called the Sublot Division Ordinance in 2015. And that law actually is only applicable in multifamily areas. And so the goal is really, can we make it applicable in all communities? And again, this just provides the opportunity for people to do something. And our coalition is a Black and Brown coalition. And for them, they're definitely interested with the history, but they're interested in the next piece, the wealth building piece, right? Because history is wonderful. Let's address it. Let's move on. But let's get the piece of the pie that we were denied. And that's where I think you all from the banking institutions come in. Because if we can take a home value of $1 million in Kensington, knock it down a little bit to a smaller value, now we can start to get down payment assistance for folks in the form of grants, not saying you'll pay us back, then folks like yourselves can come in and provide the mortgages for those parcels of land to individuals. So the individuals actually realize home ownership opportunities. So you guys are a piece of this. But the challenge right now is if I go to a philanthropist like a Robert Price and I say, we need to do home ownership, Robert Price just shakes his head and goes, $600,000 a house? Are you kidding me? That's crazy. You know, how much am I going to put out there for this? And the reality is the value's too high. We all know it's too high. Again, I live in Kensington. The only way you can actually own a home in Kensington, unfortunately, is someone passes away or someone moves, because they ain't building any more houses in this neighborhood. And so the value is artificially inflated. And so what we have to do is think about it. So yes, you guys are integral to this conversation. And in fact, our coalition, this is, again, their most interest is not so much the policy. They want to address the policy because, again, in this whole kind of social justice summer that we've had, we've talked about structural racism. This is structural racism. This is it right in our faces. And so the idea is that if we start to address this, and this is really not that complicated, it's just a change of imagination. And if you're a homeowner, again, what's going to happen to you when you sell it? You're going to price this into your land value. You're going to realize a gain. So you're not even going without. Now, if your concern is you're going to live next to people of color or poor people, I can't help you with that. That's not something that we can address here. But the idea that we can look at land differently, that's important. So I think if this group was interested and said, yes, we should look at policies like what you all are doing with sublot division ordinance. Tony Atkins just did it again. Same thing we did, except she said you can take the lot and go in 2. We're saying you should go in 4 so that each home can be owned by that person. I would love for that support from this group. And then the other thing would be that when we pass this, because this has to change. I mean, Sacramento's been trying this for how many times now? This has to change. We can't live the same way we're living. Then once that change does happen, that we start to really, using groups like LISC, we go after philanthropy and other groups and organizations to get grants for down payments, maybe even from some of your institutions. And then we start to put folks in mortgages, actual mortgages, and we give them that opportunity of home ownership that they so badly want and so badly desire. And also, you know, if you work in La Jolla, now you can potentially live in La Jolla. If you work in some other part of the community, you can actually live in those communities. Again, right now, you know, I have a lot of family that works hard every day, but they don't have the same opportunity of where to live that I do, right? And so honestly, they're stuck in some ways in these neighborhoods. This is where they can actually only live. But why can't they live in Kensington? Why can't they live in Mission Hills? Why can't they live in these neighborhoods? That's what we're trying to do, is trying to create that opportunity. And then ultimately all roads lead back to our banking folks, because you all are the crucial link in ensuring that we get people financial resources, not only to realize wealth, but then to build businesses, to do other things, right? Because our country's built on credit. It's built on financial credit. And so that's part of this discussion that I think is so important. And also it says a signal, I think, to people of color that, look, we have to think of home ownership, and we have to think of it in a way that actually gets you into home ownership, and also in a way that doesn't force you to have to live in certain neighborhoods that maybe you don't want to live in. Maybe you actually prefer to live somewhere else. I don't know. So yeah, we're excited.
Ricardo, I'm just gonna, we have 2 items and they're both roundtables. So I just want to make sure that Steve has an opportunity to this question or comment.
Well, so I have a comment, two comments actually. One has to do with the opportunity to pair up or partner with other entities that are offering down payment. As HFA, for instance, I sit on the board, has a program that's totally underutilized in San Diego County, and we know why. Prices are high. So I think there's going to have to be layering of programs to get to that affordability. The other, I'll talk briefly about the persistence of these red line districts, because we just had Dr. Sandel at our conference yesterday talking about health stressors, toxic stress, and rent was actually the single biggest cause of stress. And she overlaid a map that showed existing areas of economic distress and with a map of hypertension in 3-year-olds. And that to me was the thing that just slayed me, was that here you see this persistent, these effects. And rent is the stressor. When we look at all the things that was causing people stress, we've got to give people rental assistance so they can stabilize their lives and move on. And we've got to use all the tools we've got to make this possible.
Yeah, one thing, our partners at Kaiser are actually working now in City Heights with us because of that same thing you just said. They call it swimming upstream. So the private sector and the hospitals and others, they understand what's happening here. They understand that people are coming to them sicker and sicker, or people are going to be coming to them sicker and sicker, and they want to cut that off.
Okay, thank you very much for the presentation. I think that the group has a lot of interest. I know that we have discussed this. We haven't been able to dig down to some of the details and some of my just questions about, I think you kind of mentioned it. Well, I can't help you if you don't want to live next to brown, Black and brown people. And that's where my issue would be that, yeah, I'm here to change the policy, but there also are some matters of the heart and matters of the, of the mind that I don't know that this would have an effect on. And my what I would want to dig into is that, are we changing policy to benefit more investors, to benefit more people who are already wealthy, and continue to block and leave folks out. So I just think now is the time for this discussion, and we have to be strategic about the way that we approach these things so that we box out those unintended consequences, so that we really are honing in. And so I know that folks get frustrated with me sometimes because I do like to dig down in the details, but I really feel a duty to leave wherever I'm going to be, leave this office or whatever with the next generation or next person or next people coming in knowing that something actually works. And the idea, the concept is like awesome. And then the details are what will get you, down the line. And so as long as, I'm looking forward to discussing that with you about those unintended consequences, because, investors are, on top of this type of stuff and have the resources already to take advantage of it. So there would have to be almost like a mandate to ensure that this works for the people that is intended, as we can see from your passion, to work for. So that's what I would have to say. So I know we are in talks about this, so we'll be continuing to discuss it. All right. Okay. So let's go on to item number 8. It's easier if I go back to what's on my computer. Okay. Update of economic impacts of COVID-19, the COVID-19 pandemic. This is a round robin. And so I'm just going to ask everyone to share about 3 to 4 minutes of what your organizations, what the banks have been doing around COVID-19 and helping in whatever way that you have been able to help during this time. And so we're going to start with the banks and then move forward to small business policy, affordable housing, and wrap up this item with final comments from us, from the co-chairs. So let's have Pamela Gabriel from Bank of America. Please start us off. Thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you for having me, as always. The coronavirus definitely has impacted us in more ways than we can even imagine. The bank has been trying to do as much as we can throughout the company, and the first thing that we did was definitely issue out a number of large philanthropic support and grants out to the community to support the coronavirus. Our philanthropic support this year has actually doubled to 2.2 million, and specifically for the coronavirus has been around 1.1 million. The grants in itself have really focused on small businesses in the beginning, especially with the processing of PPP, affordable housing, hunger, all of the things that were immediate need and crises are the things that we really try to focus on. In addition to that, we've also been sending out masks to the community. At this point, we've already given out 88,000 masks. 50,000 went to the city of San Diego, 26,000 to Chicano Federation, 10 to the Jacob Center, and we are taking any requests from any other organizations, still have some pending requests, probably about 40,000 to Alpha Project. And I know the city of San Diego had sent out some to the fire department and different areas to ensure that we're helping. That also will include hand sanitizer. Now, we just opened that up. So looking forward to getting those resources out. As far as supporting the small businesses and just supporting and from a financial standpoint, we have processed approximately 1.8 million payment deferral requests across our credit card, auto, mortgage, and home equity and small business loans through our client assistant program. We are continuing to help small businesses access government loans through the SBA's Paycheck Protection Program. And I know that across the nation, we have done a lot of this work, but specifically here in San Diego as it pertains to our meeting, we've helped more than 6,204 small businesses. 80% of these businesses have had fewer than 10 employees. And the total of this has been about 508 million in funding. We understand also too that there have been, because of the coronavirus, it has had a disproportionate impact to communities of color. Bank of America had announced a $1 billion commitment over the next 4 years to help drive racial equality and economic opportunity to address these gaps. A lot of that plan is still being worked out. Just recently, we did talk about an allocation of those funds. Those will specifically go to jobs initiatives in Black and Hispanic Latino communities, supportive community outreach and initiatives, minority depository institutions, as well as a focus on minority entrepreneurs, business, and funds. Last but not least, we just recently issued out a $2 billion equity progress sustainability bond. This is the first of its kind, and it's really going to be specifically targeting the advancement of racial equality. And so we're looking forward to seeing how that comes into play. At this time, I know that there was also that public comment in regards to the closures. Is this where you would like for me to address that as well?
Actually, if I can jump in, we, under the Brown Act, we cannot act on and I've actually been emailing with him, which is why I asked you the question and you knew the answer. So I will respond to his, to what he said, and I'm happy to share that with anyone else too. I can just say briefly, because he raised this issue with me, we have been looking into it with staff, and we may bring it back as an item in November, or change how we do the survey to get a little more timely information. It seems like the branches that closed in May of 2019, but still, if it was invisible to people and they wanted a chance to comment, we want to give them a chance to have that information. If I could toss into the purpose of this item is more to hear what the needs are that are currently unmet and most urgent. And if you're seeing interventions that work really well that we do want to double down on, that would be the most helpful, just in the interest of time. And also, council member, I don't know.
Yes, I saw your note. Okay. So I'll wrap, Pamela can wrap up, and then we'll go to Elizabeth.
Yeah, I think I can be done.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you for that note, Daisy. I thought maybe as a task force, we had a little bit more leeway in that, but I'll remember, because that's how we do it at the city. So we're gonna go ahead to Elizabeth Schott from Axion San Diego to give a quick update. I think she has had something come up.
She may have already jumped into the car, so hopefully we'll get her back if she doesn't have technology issues.
Okay, all right. I see someone did join by phone. But okay, so let's go with Chi Elder. You're up next, and again, just focus on kind of an assessment of what's working and what may need some improvement.
So I'm sorry, I just need to clarify. So are you asking what's working within the city or just what I see in the community?
With what city has been able to do around COVID-19 relief, and how that has impacted the communities that you meant to serve, and whether you see that as a success, what could be done better. I think, Daisy, is that really what we're going for? Just an assessment of?
I think this is more problem solving oriented. So if you as an individual or your organization are hearing about really critical needs that are still unmet, or looking around the corner at evictions, things like that, what's going to be happening, that may be a little more succinct.
I wonder, Daisy, sorry to interrupt. I wonder, would it make sense to then have maybe our nonprofit partners kind of who are working directly with some of the impacted communities? 'Cause, I mean, I know for myself in my role, I really rely on some of those community voices of the practitioners to really help inform the strategies that we're developing, both on the philanthropic side and then on the products and services side from our business end. So I think that they might have better insight just in terms of the needs on the ground in the communities. So that's just a thought.
Why don't I suggest this? I think maybe we need to prepare our partners, our task force members, a little bit more for what we're looking for this item. So would it be possible to table it and just go ahead and go to the item number 9, since we are having a meeting in a month?
Council member, I'm happy to do that. We did, the emails that went out to the members and to your staff did give everyone a heads up that we would be asking them. Although I'm sorry, I didn't really distinguish between the community members and the financial institutions. But we may have some community members who are ready to speak, if you'd like.
Anybody that can speak to that in 3 to 4 minutes, then we'll go ahead and take that. I just, I want to make sure that we're being productive with the time that we have. So
Daisy, can you hear me now? It's Elizabeth.
Yeah, Elizabeth, go ahead. Go ahead. We were waiting for you. Go ahead.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I can just speak briefly about, some of the trends that we're seeing with small businesses. There's obviously a lot that we could cover, but in the interest of time, I think, in general, I think obviously everybody's seeing that small businesses are having a struggling time. We're seeing a couple of different things. One, I think, it takes a village. I think there is still need for access to capital through both grant programs and lowest interest loan programs. And so I know there's still a lot of different grant opportunities going on for small businesses and the low interest loans, and that we thank Supervisor Fletcher and the County Board of Supervisors for opening up the 1% county loan program, which we're administering. And I think overall, we are seeing trends that small businesses are seeking either grant capital or low interest loan products, particularly with types of deferred payments and options, so that they don't necessarily have the cash flow burden of a payment immediately, given the uncertainty of the future of the situation. I think, in some cases, we're seeing some businesses close. In other cases, we're seeing some businesses have to really pivot and innovate, diversifying their revenue streams, going to an e-commerce type platform. And so I think one of the things you're actively seeing small business, nonprofit providers and service providers really trying to work together in the community is to try and facilitate programs where we're not only working towards getting small businesses the resources that they need, but helping to pivot them. Like we were working with the Hispanic E-Chamber of Commerce on trying to really educate people on how to do e-commerce on their websites, working with Jacobs folks and the Logan Heights CDC and folks like that, where we're trying to think about how can we better prepare small businesses moving into the future for crises such as these, where they have better infrastructure and and opportunity to have a little bit more cushion if something like this, occurs. And then also responding to people who have frankly lost their jobs and they need a source of income. And so we are still seeing people want to participate in types of trainings where they're actually learning how to start a business or to pivot and supplement their family's income. For example, we have 25 Latinas going through a startup training academy that we're doing in partnership with the Eva Longoria Foundation. Really looking at opportunities to support people to supplement income too. So there's a lot of different efforts going on, and we're certainly, I think, seeing a lot of government entities, nonprofit partners, community service, and I think, the banks with many of these programs are supporting a lot of these efforts that are happening. And I don't think it's going to solve everything overnight, but I certainly do think that this is a long journey, and so there's steps that are being taken to be responsive to these needs, but it's certainly not something that's going to be solved overnight. So that's what I would say generally speaking, and happy to provide more context in the next meeting as well.
Okay, thank you so much, Elizabeth. I'm going to go just based on everyone being notified. I'm going to go in the order that we had. I think that it's important for our banking partners to just be able to give that quick assessment because I think it's important to know what impact that you're giving in your participation in this effort and in the community is having. I think that's important for all of us. And so I'm going to go back to She Elder, and I think that if you have an understanding now that you can move forward at 3 to 4 minutes.
Sure. Thank you. So in addition to what Citibank has been doing around COVID-19 to support customers and clients who have been adversely impacted by the crisis, so in addition to the waivers for credit cards of the minimum payment, requirement of late fees, personal loans, deferral of the monthly payment and waiver as well. In terms of retail bank, fee waivers on safe deposit box fees and non-city ATM usage fees. And then also for small businesses, extending fee waivers on monthly service fees and remote deposit capture fees. So in addition to that, I think what also is I see as innovative is that Citi Foundation has provided a CDFI grant opportunity for CDFIs across the country. And so what they're doing is providing basically capacity building grants to CDFIs who are serving small businesses owned by people of color and low to moderate income individuals and communities. This is a unique opportunity to really provide that support that CDFIs are doing to provide the financial products and services that target the small businesses and individuals, particularly in communities that are Black, Latinx, Asian, Pacific Islander, Native American, and Indigenous owned businesses, as well as low and moderate income consumers. And then in addition to that, City Community Relations has provided flexible charitable contributions this year to allow the nonprofit organizations and other public partners that we work with to redirect the support that we've given them towards program and or COVID-19 recovery and relief efforts. So in a nutshell, those are the positive things that I see Citi has been doing to address the crisis this year.
Okay, thank you, Chief. We're going to move to Sarah Bowles now, JP Morgan Chase.
Great, thank you. So, obviously initially when the pandemic started, the crisis hit, we were very active supporting and partnering with the SBA's Paycheck Protection Program, instituted a number of efforts with our with our clients, including payment deferrals for small business banking clients, for folks with a mortgage with us, credit card deferral payments as well. And so those continue to be sort of a part of our relief efforts in terms of reducing the burden that folks are experiencing at this point in time. We additionally had initially made a $50 million philanthropic commitment to address the needs, both kind of from the immediate humanitarian and emergency relief, as well as public health challenges from the pandemic, and additionally stood up a $150 million lending program specifically to partner with community development financial institutions to allow these entities to be able to deploy low-cost capital to underserved small businesses. I think across the community, we can all agree that the measures, I would say, coming from the federal government have not been sufficient as the pandemic continues to drag out much longer, I think, than folks initially anticipated. And so as within our own institution, we're looking at ways to, I would say, more formally incorporate some of these COVID-specific measures into what will then become sort of routine products and services. As an example, this the commitment that I shared earlier from the firm, just in terms of our $30 billion commitment around addressing some of the key drivers of the racial wealth divide. I think, what COVID has certainly brought to the forefront has been the sort of exacerbated racial wealth divide and inequality. And so the folks that are really being the most negatively impacted are those that were the most vulnerable going into this pandemic. And so I think, again, from our philanthropic standpoint, as well as from our business practices, thinking about what additional tools and services can we be offering to help address this once, continuing into this recovery period that continues to be, unfortunately, very prolonged.
Thank you so much, Sarah. We are going to move to Raquette Ewell from US Bank.
Thanks, Monica. So I think in terms of just the needs that we've seen and the responses, it really does echo kind of what Sarah and Chi have said. I think the difference might be just the scale, but specifically from the consumer side, we've seen folks in response to COVID really wanting to move to contactless or digital engagement with us. So we have really put an emphasis on sitting down with our clients as they come in and helping them make that transition to using an online app, making sure that folks are aware that we have an app that's available in Spanish as well, and really helping transition folks who, for a lot of reasons, may really have concerns about walking into one of our offices during the era of COVID. So we did a lot of work around just helping people get comfortable in the digital space, and we've seen utilization, in terms of actual transactions where someone comes into the office and the use of digital, you see that usage has gone up incredibly, and we would expect after this crisis is passed that may continue to be the case. So in terms of our business customers, someone had mentioned earlier about a lot of small business owners really needing grants along with technical assistance and counseling to just help them get to the next place and make it through. Nationally, we've engaged in some partnerships with folks like LIST that really are focused on delivering support and helping to invest and to attract additional investment that can be kind of grant dollars for those businesses, along with the technical assistance. Obviously, like everyone else, we participated in PPP, and now we're working really with those clients around the sort of the other end of PPP, where that converts into a grant. And that's a pretty significant mobilization of people, because as I think folks know, the bankers know, it's a work in progress. And so in some ways it feels like our government's building the plane as they're trying to fly it. So there's that aspect of it. Much as the folks who spoke before me have talked about, from a philanthropic standpoint, we have inserted a level of flexibility into our grant making. We've said to our trusted nonprofit partners, use the dollars in ways you see that will meet the need of the current crisis. For example, a lot of our partners have had to figure out, how do we stay connected and serve vulnerable populations if we can't see them, if we have to do it online? How do we get them the digital resource, the connectivity that they need in order to work with us? And so we've just said, use our dollars in ways that make sense, that either help you operate or help you deliver that service and be connected. I think here locally, we've invested in the fund that the San Diego Foundation manages. It's really about helping people who are dealing with job loss, housing insecurity, food insecurity. We've invested in the Central Blacks Chambers Fund as well. And again, that's really around seeing that there's a real need for businesses to access really immediate assistance that doesn't look like a regular loan, but really looks like a forgivable grant in order to get them through this period and into recovery. In addition to that, because we've been impacted by, the other thing COVID has done is sort of highlight, COVID and the death of George Floyd has highlighted the systemic gaps and inequities. And so we've stood up a couple of funds, our Rebuild and Transform Fund, that's really designed to invest in organizations that are led, BIPOC led by people who are from communities of color, and really addressing systemic issues and trying to really move the needle at the source of the problem. We stood the fund up. We're headquartered in Minneapolis, so we lived the turmoil as a company in a really, I think, significant way, and are really trying to be actively part of solutions. So the fund really is focused in 10 communities that were impacted by the unrest, but also communities that have, in terms of social mobility, we use data that looked at that, and we picked communities where those mobility measures for Blacks and others in communities of colors, the gap between them and everyone else was the most significant. And so we invested a lot in Minneapolis, our headquarters city, and then invested in 10 other communities. And I think as we move forward through this kind of new and different universe, we continue to be open to conversations about how we can invest, develop products, and just be part of moving us forward and learning from this and helping the communities where we do business be better.
Okay, thank you very much. We're going to go to Frank Robinson, Union Bank.
Okay. Again, good afternoon. I just want to touch on a couple things. Number one, first thing that we went through is with the COVID is we put a $3 million fund together. Then as the racial injustice started happened, we said, hey, can we do more? So we did the $10 million fund. But here's some things that came out to your basic question that you asked. What we saw was the increased visibility of the underserved and a need to address them and have to be more innovative in addressing their needs and support because it was different. It was like they were just invisible. They just lived and we didn't even see them. And so you have all this, what bubbled up through COVID was, oh my goodness, how do you help somebody and you're telling your kids you got to go to school and they've got to do this virtually, but they don't even have internet capability. And so now you have this big digital divide. So it required banks to even think more deeply about what they can do to help that. Do we start looking at taking desktop computers and donating them and to supporting, schools and communities and things like that. So that's something that came out of that normally we would never think about. I think one of the things that we should do, Monica, is we should create a list of best practices that some of these national banks, and including Union, I mean, we're not a national, but we're super regional, and really look towards how they were able to deal with COVID and racial injustice across the country. Because there's probably some practices that are done in New York and other spots that we may know about that we should bring to San Diego. So I leave you with thinking about that. Again, supporting the Central Black Chamber of Commerce with a Black business fund was outstanding. Really kind of threw it. And it was kind of an industry leader because the chamber and everybody else jumped on it quickly. And it just became one of the catalysts. So thank you for putting that together. I think one of the things that we found very interesting with talking to our small business owners, and I'm really talking about minority small business owners, was they did not have a relationship with their banker. I used a story about Magic Johnson. I know Magic Johnson. I'm just not sure he knows me in the sense that you may know your banker, but does your banker know you? So you have to start now asking for a meeting, telling them about your dreams. Do they know what your future plans are? And how can they help you, guide you through this? Because a true banker does not want to be your business banker. He wants to be your business partner. And a lot of our minority business owners did not do that. I mean, did not take that meeting or did not ask for that meeting, or better yet, did not demand that meeting. So we pivoted on trying to do more of a grassroots about education of those folks. And then what I think is really critical is establishing the new PPP, which is the public-private partnership. We have to establish and how banks and then the public can get together and come up with new innovative solutions around dealing with systemic racism, housing. I mean, Carla talked about The Color of Law. I got it right here. It's a fascinating read. And it's a true story of how I grew up in Louisiana, so I know about this. And then the last thing I want to say is that Union Bank this week just launched and just actually released the Union Bank Minority Small Business Survey. This was done across the nation and also in California. And we had a huge target on minority-owned businesses. And the findings are incredible that we found out. Minority-owned businesses are actually a little bit more positive now because they had to pivot. They had to be innovative. They had to go online, which was mentioned earlier. But the data that from this can really guide a lot of our thinking. And I'll share that with the council and the committee task force. And then there's still issues about lending and what we can do, but the positivity of our minority-owned businesses going forward, it was just amazing to me. And it looked about how they were resilient and pivot and innovative as they go through this COVID pandemic situation. And that is what I have to report out.
Okay, thank you very much. And we'll certainly, I know Daisy always takes good notes, so we'll certainly follow up on some of all of your suggestions, and then hear even more from our nonprofit partners. But our last banking partner is Antonio Barbosa, Wells Fargo.
Well, thank you. I know that we don't have a lot of time, and I don't want to repeat. You know that all banks are kind of doing the same projects. I already mentioned that I was working on the community needs assessment. We spoke about the housing affordability issues from the experts today. I think the other thing that we have to address, and is going to be very important, is the access to capital, the access to training for small business, the providing technical assistance. I echo what Frank just said about those best practices. I had the opportunity to be part of that, as I mentioned before, with the 400 million that we're donating thanks to the PPP. I was involved in the first phase of the 250 million to support CDFIs. And I was able to read about 70 grants. And I was learning so much about other things that they're doing in other regions. So there is a huge opportunity to bring those practices here. We have something very unique in San Diego. Every time I ask about a reinvestment task force, I think San Diego is the only one. There is something similar in New York, but there is nothing like we have here. So my recommendation is that we have to take the opportunity that everybody's working here together. And that what Frank mentioned, I think it could be something that we need to build on. In terms of the other things that are happening around those 400 million, is this month we started the second phase of the Open for Business program, and it's around technical assistance. So I've been in contact with most of the organizations in San Diego providing technical assistance for small businesses, because one of the things that happened with the first phase is Wells Fargo decided not to give any budgets per region. It was just about the best grants applications. So there were regions with 5, 6 organizations getting support because they had really good grant applications, really good programs. So I've been in contact with everybody here, all the organizations providing technical assistance, CDFIs, chambers of commerce, everybody that is providing education, because we have a great opportunity to bring that money to San Diego. I'm hoping to have a really good news from the first phase. There was only one CDFI that applied from San Diego, and it was Acción. Too bad that there were opportunities for others to apply, but they didn't. Also, my last thing is to mention about best practices. I'm happy to announce that a Mission Asset Fund from San Francisco that provides a unique way for people to start building their credit and understanding credit or repairing credit, already announced that they will be partnering with Casa Familiar in San Isidro. So that is great news. And this is obviously sponsored by Wells Fargo. And it comes in a perfect timing, because as you know, San Isidro is one of the areas that has been hitting so hard because the border is closed. 80% of their economy was around the border, and I don't know when it's going to be open. So that's one of the areas. If you're thinking about one areas in San Diego, I think San Isidro is one of the ones that might need a lot of support for the next years to come. So I don't want to go through the other things that we're doing, because I don't think it's very similar to what the other banks are doing.
Okay, thank you so much for that. We are going to move on to our small business organizations. Those who are closest to our small businesses will hear about new programs or assistance, and then another sort of needs assessment. So we'll start with Ricardo Flores, LISC.
Yes, thank you. So, first of all, I want to say thank you to our banking partners, because when this crisis hit, the first thing they did is they started going to groups like LISC and others and started to say, what do you need? How can we be helpful? And how can we help you with the relationships that you have on the ground with these smaller chambers or with these small business, with CDCs and others. So thank you to our banking partners for really reacting very quickly and then continuing to react. And like it was mentioned, Rocky and US Bank came through and provided money for seed money, I should say, that the community of City Heights was able to leverage into about $400,000 for small businesses in City Heights. Wells Fargo was able to provide us $20,000 a piece for all of our FOC sites to help our financial literacy for folks, and also help provide those clients of those sites money or other things to kind of pass the pandemic. We were also an allocatee of PPP at some point towards the end. If the PPP does happen and the government allows us, we will continue to do that. And we will work with our local ethnic chambers and others really to stretch those PPP dollars as far out to our communities of color. Our focus was women, people of color, and veterans, businesses. But we also provided support to our nonprofits as well, because our nonprofits, as it was mentioned, whether it's the Chamber, the San Isidro Chamber, the National City Chamber, the Diamond Bid, the BIDs, El Cajon Bid, CDCs like Casa Familiar and City Heights CDC, those folks are on the ground. And so we realized that. And so our ability to get them money and to get that money out the door was really, really important. And to continue that, I mean, we're seeing that unfortunately this situation is continuing on. And so there's going to be continued need for capital, let alone probably a need when we hopefully restart the economy in a more normal way. Nationally, and it was also mentioned, I think, by Elizabeth and Accion, nationally, it's all about grants. One of the interesting things about this time is that, yes, it's been very challenging for our clients. It's been challenging for all of us as a society, as a city, as a state, country. But we're also seeing corporations really kind of change and step up in some ways. Verizon started us off with about $7 million early on, and it's gone all the way to Lowe's. That's given $50 million at a national level. $1 million of that came here to San Diego. We're seeing groups like Netflix providing us capital, the millions to invest in Black-owned banks, because we realize that's really crucial as well, to step those groups up as well. So really important. The other thing too is we've had, I mentioned partners like Kaiser, healthcare institutions have really come up and said, okay, we were already interested in working in communities like City Heights, but now we want to get more intentional. And so that's really important, because again, if we can bring an institution like Kaiser, and Kaiser can leverage what Price is doing, then you actually have something, right? Then you have something cooking. And so if we can then model that in Councilmember Montgomery's district as well, where you're starting to bring individuals in there that say, let us be a part of this. So leveraging what monies are there, it's really important, and really getting folks to understand the challenges these communities face, but also the opportunities that are there, right? Because there's a lot of opportunity there too, in terms of for small businesses and for folks as well. So the other thing we've been doing now is really internally, we've been having a real conversation about ownership. It's been an internal conversation, it's been an external conversation with us. And so we are really trying to find ways that we can provide home ownership opportunities for individuals, but also commercial real estate opportunities for individuals. That's really crucial and very, very important, because we want not only, in the past, let's work with our banking partners to provide low interest loans. And that's still very important, especially in terms of affordable housing and huge projects. But how can we get capital to a small business owner in District 4 to continue working or to expand their business or to open a business, whatever it may be. But more importantly, how do we get them to own the property so they cannot be displaced, and then they can take that asset and they can leverage that asset. So one of the things we're doing right now is we've lent money actually to Wakeland, a partner here on the call, to buy 4 parcels of land in the City Heights area. And the bottom of that part of that property of the building is going to be the City Heights CDC and also PANA, a refugee organization in City Heights. But they're not going to rent this. The goal is to try to get them to own that parcel so they can leverage that. And they could go to a banking institution and say, I have an asset, I have something that you can collateralize. And so those are really the big things. And I think locally, the goal for us is to really get groups like Qualcomm and groups like Sempra to really continue giving, but also to give more, to give as much as they can. And then again, of course, try to leverage that. And I think that's the value of what LIST brings to communities. And City Heights was a perfect example. The community through US Bank was able to raise some capital. We were able to have conversations with Robert Price and he was able to match that capital. And then we were able to do that again. And so that's the name of the game, is how do we leverage? How do we take a little bit of money and really do that? And so again, it's weird time, but there's also opportunity here to do some things. And most importantly, I think it's just the consciousness that's really changed. And I think back to pictures of New York City in the 1980s or the 1970s, right? Bedford-Stuyvesant and some of these places. And I mean, you look back and it's like, that's like Aleppo, Syria. I mean, how did we allow that? how did we allow that? And so really, I think that we're trying to now figure out how we work with our banking partners, work with philanthropy, work with our government partners as well, and how do we get money out to communities for ownership opportunities.
Really appreciate all of your work. I want to go, I don't see Mitch Johnson on the call. So if I'm gonna go ahead, we've already talked to Elizabeth. So we're gonna, and then Dr. Green is not here either. So we're gonna go to our affordable housing partners. And so Stephen, if you could start us off.
Sorry, hit the wrong button there. No, I'll be really quick. The three things that have been just absolutely most critical: rent, food, internet access. And in most households that we're aware of, the rent eats first and people are looking for food. So we've done everything we can. My other partners here, Mac and Wakeland, can talk about what they've done, the frontline workers, in connecting residents to food, because they pay their first. Rent collections are astonishingly high, given how much economic suffering there is, that people are doing everything they can to maintain their housing. We need rent relief more than anything else, and we need food in the meantime so people can do that. I'll let my members talk more about what their needs are. We've done everything we can to facilitate that. We've done a lot of online education and peer-to-peer networking to facilitate that. They're doing the actual work on the ground.
Okay, I'm hearing, I skipped over IRC. We do have a representative here. I'm sorry, Jessica. Go ahead, I apologize.
No, thank you so much, Councilmember. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Great, I do apologize. Earlier I was having microphone issues, so I'm glad you can hear me this time. So I can introduce myself. I'm Jessica Vavzhinyak. I'm the Economic Empowerment Supervisor with the International Rescue Committee here in San Diego. And we do provide a range of services to support LMI individuals and families in San Diego, with a particular focus on refugees, asylum seekers, immigrants, including, of course, small business owners in these communities. So this is the lens I'm speaking from. And I know that we want to kind of highlight some urgent needs, and digital access and literacy are, of course, I think is a given, but I think the specific access to kind of government documentation, delays in obtaining that kind of documentation for people in these communities, filling out applications for unemployment, PPP claims, and delays in all of that with regard to accessibility and technical support. And then, of course, housing, affordability and security, specifically with harassment from and challenges in communicating with landlords for these communities. Of course, an accumulation of debt and fees, mental health support, which is traditionally not available to people in these communities, and of course has a very deep stigma. And of course, exacerbated racial and language divides. And it's not just how you look and are perceived, but how people, especially who are arriving to the US brand new within the Corona time, but who haven't been able to engage in the community as we normally would, it's how you're able to engage in the world around you. And so there's a lot of isolation for the individuals and families that we serve. As far as some interventions and policies that have really worked, there's been a lot of mention of this. Amendments to contracts, adjustments and transition to COVID triage and response has been, the flexibility around that has been really, really great from our funding partners, and that we can just deliver the services most efficiently and effectively in a short amount of time where the need is greatest. So really providing equipment directly in the hands of clients, and service delivery adaptations, cash aid to recipients' discretion, because as we know, your needs when you apply for cash for specific assistance or a grant may change by the time that all that paperwork goes through and you receive it, and you have to move, and you can only get it through your bank, or you have to get it through your check, and so many different challenges of that nature. Things that we've really seen help are a transition to digital signatures now allowable in many cases. And then with our SBDC, the partnership with the city and county for referrals, so that we could help people applying for the loans and grants to access capital for their businesses was huge. And, the challenge with that is that it does require a lot of documentation. And again, our clients don't have those handy and needed that technical assistance and support, and don't have necessarily laptops or accountants on payroll, especially if you're a small business owner. So really the capacity building, exposure of businesses, promotion of small businesses through organized community events that include where safety measures are in place, social media, and internet reach, so the increased capacity of those things. And I think internally, as with any organization and many institutions everywhere, even though IRC is supposed to be, a beacon of diversity and all of that good stuff, I think our own internal reflection and emphasis on internal growth, on diversity, equality, inclusion initiatives has been a very important reckoning that we've also had to do. So that concludes my feedback. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica, for that. And especially the part about the self-reflection, or that's really important too. So let's move back to our affordable housing partners, and we're gonna continue with Peter Armstrong from Wakeland Housing.
Thank you. I think basically my main mission is, or my main message is, thank you. Really, Wakeland has been the beneficiary of a lot of grants from the banks who are sitting around this table. They stepped forward with, they've increased their contributions to Wakeland, and they've also given us the flexibility to deliver services and resources directly to the residents. And again, I have the good fortune of seeing the cards, the pictures, videos. Sometimes residents will, take a photo of the meals that they're preparing with the food that they're getting. And so, our folks are putting the food at their doorstep, but really your resources, were vital to get it there. So thank you very much. I just wanted, those resources are desperately needed, and the residents are really grateful. So thank you.
Thank you, Peter. So we are going to go to our last speaker, Adolfo Ventura, MAC Project.
Thank you. Well, I also want to echo what Peter said. I want to thank everybody who's, on this call. I look around my screen here. I would normally say around the table, and, I see a lot of familiar faces, a lot of supporters, and MAC is very grateful for your support. I'm going to take my time to talk a little bit about an effort that MAC is part of. So, you guys know we have preschools, 2,000 kids, high schools, affordable housing development. So a lot of the issues that have come up are very familiar and very close to MAC. But what we learned very quickly was that the need was far more greater than the resources that we here at MAC have, despite the great efforts and the friends and the donors and the partnerships that had brought resources to us to assist all of our residents and the community at large. So we formed, along with other community-based organizations, a coalition called the San Diego Latino Health Coalition. MAC is one of the 4 leads of this coalition. Very quickly, we learned that health and takes precedence many times, and it has great impact on the ability to work, which would give you the ability to bring that food, or if you're sick, you can go to work. So we started learning. Now, MAC is not an expert in health per se, but the partners that we started working with in the population we work with, which is primarily low income, and by the nature of where we serve, where we're at, Latinos, we learned that health was a big issue. According to data from the County of Health and Human Services, we know that 62% of the COVID infections are Latinos. 48% of the deaths in San Diego are Latinos. We know that low-income residents in San Diego County are more likely to work in the front lines, more likely to ride public transit, more likely to have underlying conditions, and also more likely to live in multi-generational homes. All that just contributes to being exposed and being able to, contract the virus. And being in that situation in a household really prevents everything else we're discussing, right? Whether the ability to focus in school, go to work, bring food. So what we've done with this coalition really established resource centers throughout the county. And the 4 leads are San Isidro Health, South Bay Community Services, Chicano Federation, and MAC. And we have 4 resource centers throughout. MAC is, for the most part, handling the North County one. Even though we're primarily based in South County, we have strong partners here. And what we've done is been able to see beyond, what we do and really focus on the need of the community. What we're trying to do really is focus on communicating ongoing guidance on prevention, testing, contact tracing, and anything that would help our community overcome and be healthier to better combat the real impact. What we know is that this is not just about health, right? We know that the economic impacts are really just as devastating, but we have to be able to have access. Now, we can talk as an organization of what we know from our residents, but those that really know what's working and what's not working and what their needs are those that are being impacted. So as a coalition, we're actually, we've been going officially live maybe about week 5 right now. And later this month, we have 2 sessions. They're going to be virtual community engagement sessions, one in Spanish, one in English, October 20th and 27th. And by the way, I can send out the link for the coalition website and the dates and the link to these forums, virtual community sessions that we're going to have. But our hope is to really learn from those that are being impacted, what has been working, what's the gap right now, what's the real need, and how can MAC and other organizations similar, and maybe folks around this meeting can really come and address very specific needs to our San Diegans, not only the city of San Diego, but county all around. Not to say that MAC as an organization, we haven't had our own share of our experience and what we face. Absolutely, I relate to every other organization that has spoken. We've been lucky to be able to overcome a lot of the challenges. We're proud to say that we didn't unemploy anybody. We didn't have to furlough anyone. We're a company close to 500 employees. Many of them stayed at home for a little while, but we were able to sustain that effort once again, thanks to the many friends and contributions of many folks sitting around this call. So for that, we're blessed and we're grateful, but we also have to think of those that we're serving, which is the reason why MAC is here and why we're present. So I wanted to bring just this comment to this group because I know next month we are going to have another meeting. And based on what we're going to be learning on the 2 upcoming forums later this month, I think we're going to be able to have a lot of valuable data that is coming from those that are impacted. And if there's an opportunity, Daisy, to possibly have more of a formalized presentation from the actual coalition, we gladly would be, we would gladly want to be in the agenda and be able to present some of those findings. Like I said, it speaks countywide, very specific also in San Diego. So sorry if I took a little bit more than 3 minutes, but I wanted to take an opportunity to just echo it a little bit more of a collaborative effort because we have to put those needs before even just our organizations. So thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We appreciate you. And so that was our last speaker. I want to turn to Supervisor Fletcher briefly because I think he may have a hard stop and I do too. So I'm going to turn to him and see if he has any comments.
No, thank you. I'll be very brief. I think everyone's covered. COVID didn't create the inequities, but it certainly exacerbated them and highlighted them in a way where we can't look away. You just can't look away. And so I've pushed hard as hell here at the county to move testing and move resources and move access in culturally competent ways. But as it relates directly to economic assistance in March with the San Diego Foundation, we launched a community response fund, which has now raised more than $50 million to go in direct grants and aids to individuals and organizations who need help. I also brought forward an item. I know the city did rental assistance as well, and they really led the way. Following what the city did, I brought forward an item for my board where we allocated $24 million in direct rental assistance to individuals throughout San Diego County. We also had a few $1 for landlord-tenant counseling, which is a really, I think, critical piece of this. To help folks renegotiate, negotiate, navigate through what their rights are and applying these types of things. And I think that's something in general we need to do more of. Was also successful, a little surprised I got this through, to get a few $1 million in COVID recovery stipends. You never want someone to have to choose between, do I follow the public health order to quarantine or isolate, or do I feed my kids? Not all workers out there are eligible for UI or other types of programs, particularly depending upon your immigration status. And so we're able to provide cash assistance to individuals who've tested positive or individuals who are close contacts and have to quarantine. We also got $2 million to bridge digital divide to pay for internet services for low-income families. It's great. The schools gave them Chromebooks, which is really great. The schools, I do believe, did a great job. But that Chromebook, absent a connection, might as well be a brick. And so partnering with San Diego County Office of Education, we've been able to do that. We also cobbled together, again, city helped on the child care vouchers. We put in 5, they put in 5. We came back, I think we added $30 million in assistance for child care providers. These folks' business models were upended and done. And so I think now total child care is about $45 million we've been able to move to help them, and a series of other things. But I think all of the things we're doing are Band-Aids. And the hope is that we build back better and really think about how do we address some of these inequities that are present, that we all know are there, that we're dealing with now. And so I think the work that we do here, particularly as it relates to housing, housing affordability, and all of those types of issues is there should be a bigger burden on us to address them, given what we've seen throughout the last 8 months. So
thank you so much. Thank you, Supervisor. Also, just real quick, a lot of the same things. I think overall this has really forced us, because of our humanity, to, if we wanted to get things done, for folks to work together. And not be in our silos. And for years and years and years, the city and county have not really worked together as they should have been doing. And so, this has really brought us to the point where we have to be on the same page if we want the San Diego that this is always supposed to have been. And so we also have a digital divide program. We launched it over the last couple of weeks. 2 of the libraries that has been launched at are in District 4. And so that's very, very encouraging. We have a long list of libraries that will provide free internet for folks in the hotspots. And we're also looking at providing that in our recreation centers as well. We are in the end stages of a purchase of 2 hotels that will house about 400 folks that are integrating in from the convention center. That was another thing, the convention center housing our unsheltered population. That was another thing that the county and city really, really worked hard on, to pull resources from whatever was available to make that work. And so far, I wish I would have looked up the numbers before this, but I believe that 600 folks have been placed in housing, and there are 200 in the queue. Either it's 400 or 600 that have already been placed, but whatever the number is, we're doing a lot better there. And they found sort of they have found a niche, and because all of the resources are so close with where folks are actually laying their head at night, then it is causing great success there. So we're really proud of that. I mentioned the Office of Race and Equity will have a lot of work to do there that is integrated in all of this. So, there is a lot going on, and the city and county are really coming together to work on a lot of these issues. And so we have to do a lot more and make sure that this is integrated into our system, so that we think about people first when we're creating policy. But for now, this is showing us that it can happen. And so that's what we're doing. And once we can get together again, we have to do another roundtable where we can kind of go back and forth and ask folks questions and all of that good stuff. But we're doing the best that we can right now with this platform. And so I'm gonna see, I know that folks have to drop off, and feel free to do that. I am gonna try to do item 9, just a discussion over the November a CRA survey report and format. And if anyone has any suggestions, Daisy, if you have comments to open this up, feel free. And then if we have any discussion with that, I do have a hard stop at 3:30. I gotta hop on something else, but I'm free until then.
Thank you, Councilmember. I can say so very briefly to the members and to the public who are watching. As you know, every year the RTF member banks answer a survey that talks about what their Community Reinvestment Act related activity was. That's multifamily affordable housing, mortgages to low and moderate income persons, small business loans, grants, and the like. We produce a fairly simple report, has a lot of the raw data at the very end of it in spreadsheets, and then some charts at the beginning that try to show trends over time. And to all of you as consumers of this report and this information, I would like to reach out to you now, and please, you and the members of the public, please send me your feedback. What do you want to know about reinvestment? What can be most useful? Are there better ways to package this information that we're putting out in the report and that we collect in the data? Maybe make it more usable. There are a lot of charts to swallow, and we recognize that. This isn't super user friendly. It's more of a resource that people can go to when they want to look something up. But we want to tell the story of what's happening. So I'll just put that out there. I'm already having conversations with the co-chair staff. They've suggested that maps could be helpful, and I completely agree. There aren't a lot of things that we can map. We can map mortgages. I think in some cases it's even more important to map the context, which is where do low and moderate income people live? And then where are the loans related to that? So maybe if I start with that as a way to spur your thinking. Another thing that we're looking at is including vignettes and also speakers at the November meeting who can give examples of what the reinvestment was for the year. We're always a year behind because of the data collection. So in November, we'll be talking about data collected for the year 2019. I'll be reaching out, I'll be looking at the tax credit projects and seeing which ones might have been done by the major banks that I can relay against, like Housing Commission funding, and may reach out to some of those partners, whether it's you, Adolfo, if you did anything, or if Peter did anything in 2019. We can talk about kind of like, was it Steve, when he was talking about the affordable housing bond, he laid out, here's what the money was, here's a picture of the project. So do something like that just to make it a little less charty. But I'm looking for ideas. Again, feel free to reach out to me directly. And for the members of the public, my email address is rtf@sdhc.org. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Anybody, any quick comments? All right, so Daisy's looking for our feedback. So with that, it concludes today's meeting. I just want to encourage everyone to complete the census by October 31st. We have received that extension, which is not really extension, but it turned out to be an extension. And so check in with your friends and family. To all the public, it's very, very important. We're doing well. We have a good completion rate in the city. I'm not sure about the county, but we're doing what we're supposed to do. We just have to keep on. So we will adjourn this meeting until our next meeting, which is November 5th, 2020. And that will be our last meeting of the year. So thank you very much.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.